Again, good evening. Welcome to the City Commissioners Issues Forum. My name is Hank Dunn. I'll be your moderator tonight. This is a friendly conversation just to get to know both of you, as I said before when we were just talking earlier. The event is sponsored by the Apopka Involved Voters. It's just a community group that's trying to get a better understanding of the emerging and current issues in our neighborhood, in our community. It's designed to acquaint both of you with the community and the community with you. This event is being broadcast with the larger goal to provide voters with access and information about each of your positions on the various issues of concern to the community. So again, we welcome the opportunity to get to know both of you in a better position, and we have Mr. Kyle Becker and Ms. Lynetta Johnson. Welcome to both of you again. So.
Thank you.
As you know, we will respectfully ask that you as candidates and the audience tonight follow the general attitudes and guidelines for civility and just respect throughout this event. This is just a fact-finding one. We want to know more about you, not what you think of the other candidates, so that's good. We also ask that the audience respectfully do the same thing. Please mute your cell phones and to avoid any interruptions of that. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will be given an additional 3 minutes to inform the voters of their vision for Apopka as a closing statement, or to just say why the voters should vote for them. So at this moment, we're going to go into the introduction stage. Again, each of you will be given the 3 minutes to tell us about yourself and why they're running for the City Commission. We ask that you just cover your background at this point, work history, and relevant personal information. We're going to ask specific questions about your platform or your position as we go further in. So let's begin with Ms. Johnson. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lynetta Johnson. I live here in Apopka. I'm a veteran from the United States Air Force. Woohoo! So I had to put that in there because I appreciate all my veterans that are out there. I also am the Director of Operations from our electrical contractor here in Apopka. I have roots here that expand probably 50 plus years. My father was a veteran as well. I have 3 adult children, and I just became a grandmother. So I'm very excited about Dawn. Currently, I am doing a lot of things within the community. My focus is going to be strategic infrastructure, meaning that we do have a lot of homes here in Apopka, a lot of permits have been allocated, and I do believe the figure of 8, meaning that if you live here, you spend your money here, you know, it keeps circling within the community. I also like to talk about vocational and secondary education, meaning that not everybody wants to go to a formal college. So I believe that we should offer those opportunities, or at least foster those opportunities for people to get the career trade training that they like to have. I believe yesterday a great opportunity was with the city council meeting with the young lady with Coca-Cola. She had an opportunity. So I think those opportunities should expand, you know, throughout the city of Apopka. My other concern or things I'd like to do is really protect our senior citizens, meaning that as they get older, dementia is very prevalent. I want to make sure that they don't have to split the cost between keeping a roof over their head and their medications, or even having food in their stomach. So those are the 3 topics that I'd like to discuss on my platform if, you know, people would like to discuss that further. Thank you, sir. And that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker?
Is it just the sign waving that cuts us off, or? No, I'm kidding. No, but thank you so much, and thanks for the Apopka involved voters for putting on tonight's event. Thank you to Victory Church, Commissioner, but really Pastor Bankson, the House of God. We'll give you by your formal title here. But my name is Kyle Becker. Also a resident of Apopka, and I think that's a great way to start it in. We're all residents of Apopka here this evening, and we care for our city a very great deal. I've been in the city now. We moved here 15 years ago, started my family. My family's right here in the front row, my wife Kelly, and then my 3 daughters, Madeline, Emily, and Lucy. We just had some school orientation, so we're excited to see the school year start next week safely and efficiently. So, but my day job, I'm a senior vice president at a local community bank here in Central Florida. It's based out of Maitland. I'm in charge of all of our enterprise performance and insights. So think about how you run your business or grow your business. That's my specialty. If you've seen me before, you know that I'm a detailed guy. I like to get into the weeds and look at data and see how that can help us shape ourselves on a go-forward basis. I'm also, I would be remiss to say this, I'm a member of First United Methodist Church here in Apopka. Pastor Fisher's here in the audience this evening. And you know, I love this community. I want a city where my daughters, whether they do go to college or, to Ms. Johnson's point, a vocational trade school, or whatever they decide to do after high school, they feel like they want to call Apopka their hometown for many, many years to come. And that's really about, you know, in the position of commissioner is being part of the voice on council to make sure that our city is looking like what our residents and what our families here in the city of Apopka demand. I'm a former city commissioner. I was commissioner of seat 4, and Commissioner Nesta's here this evening, my predecessor. And I enjoyed so much of that time on city council. I served for 6 years. I prided myself on being a highly responsive representative of the people, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, what the color of your skin is, what your economic status was. I'm here to serve, and I take a great amount of pride in that. And I look forward to tonight's conversation. And, you know, of course, thank you for your service as well. So I won't scream, but you know, I share the sentiment.
Thank you, candidates. Now we'll begin with the candidate's first question about their election platforms. We'll give each candidate up to 3 minutes to respond, and we just have one question for each of you on your candidate. And we'll start with Lynette, if that's okay. According to your website, your campaign platform seeks to address strategic infrastructure, sustainable housing, supporting first responders, and education and career training. How will you accomplish these goals through the city council position you are seeking, especially the one about education and career training?
For career and educational training, luckily for me, I've been in the position as Director of Operations with Prime Electrical Services. And one of the great things I was able to foster is working with Mid-Florida Tech and getting young people or anybody into the FEAT program, which is the Florida Electrical Apprenticeship Training Program. The reward in that is seeing someone that says, you know what, Ms. Johnson, I really want to learn how to be an electrician, but I just don't have the finances. So what I do is that I go ahead and I, ask for a commitment, say, hey, I'll use the name Joe. Hey, Joe, if you want to go into the FEET program, I will go ahead and pay your tuition in your books for the next 4 years. However, I do expect a commitment of 2 years in return. Now, what that does for a young person or maybe a middle-aged person, that allows them to say, you know what, I'm going to come out the program, and right now with how the economy is, they're going to start making at least $60,000 easily. And one thing about being an electrician is also recession-proof. So when other maybe vocations are not doing so well, you will always find someone who's looking for an opportunity to do, like, put up a ceiling fan or any other type of electrical work. So my plan is with the city is to try to help foster some of that training, work with some of the local schools. I would love to work with like Apopka High School, Wekiva High School, to seek if there's interest in that. And probably, or most likely, I will be able to foster like a program, maybe with the summer hire, because I have worked with career training, Career Source, with having summer hires that come work with us. And I've been doing that since 2016. So that is something that I'm looking forward to do.
Just to follow up, and through the city council position to do that, or asking the city council to endorse something? Can you just clarify a little bit?
I can't endorse anything personally. I would have to work collectively with my council members to see if they would see that as a viable option. I can't do anything unilaterally. Of course, it would have to be a collective effort and get their feedback because they may have a different stance.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Kyle, the same thing for you. The question is, according to your website, your platform commits to a better Apopka through economic development, responsible budgeting, additional recreation, public art, and proper strategic planning. How will you accomplish these goals through the city council position you're seeking?
So you're not going to isolate one of them? You want me to address all five?
Yes.
And it's a mouthful, right? If you look at the order of operation there, I think we have to prioritize things. Obviously, my previous campaign was about a certain thing, but that was a mayoral campaign, and now we're in a commission seat. And to Ms. Johnson's point, we're collectively up there, and we have to bring our own points of view to the table to get consensus and build that consensus. And to that end, I see Mayor Nelson's here this evening too, so welcome as well. But when you think about what Apopka is all about, and growth is on the words of is in the mouth of so many people here in the city of Apopka because we are growing so quickly. So when you look at what's on my platform, strategic planning has to be first and foremost. We have to be able to manage the growth that's coming here to the city of Apopka. One of the biggest things that's going to be taking place here over the coming months and the next year is the rewrite of our comprehensive plan. I can't tell you how many times we've all done it. We've all got on social media and talked about how so-and-so doesn't want this particular residential neighborhood going behind them, or this particular type of commercial establishment going down the street from their house. The comprehensive plan is really what's going to be the blueprint for what that growth needs to look like. And there's key elements within that comprehensive plan. Our transportation element probably being the most relevant at this point. We do have a lot of residential units coming into the city of Apopka, and where do those people go? There's not a lot of places, employment centers here within the city of Apopka that people stay, so traffic has to become a key focus in making sure that transportation element is reflective of what our growth is going to end up doing. Responsible budgeting, certainly, that's probably 1B versus the previous being 1A. The city just went through their budget workshops, went to all 3 of those days, and that's really where it comes down to how are we paying for things. We can be up here and talk about the things that we want to do, but if we don't budget for it responsibly, they're not going to get done. And responsible budgeting is making sure that our public safety offices are staffed properly. It makes sure that we've got enough staff to meet the needs. Case in point, we talk about the backlog of homes that are here right now. I think people quote over 9,000 that are in the backlog. But really, if you look at it, we have a capacity model or a factory model where we have finite capacity within our permitting department. So it's not like all 9,000 are going to come on scale tomorrow. If we want to be efficient about these things, we have to make sure that we are staffed properly to handle this growth and manage it properly. Economic development, I've talked time and again, this is a small investment with big returns. getting the quality of life amenities that all of us want here in Apopka. And then really public art, we want to put our best foot forward in terms of a beautiful Apopka, a place that we're all proud to call home. And then I know that I'm out of time here, but additional recreation. We all saw over the last 2 years, COVID times, we had stay-at-home orders, things like that. What did we all want to do? We wanted to get out of the house. Yep. So passive areas for us to spend time with our families outdoors, parks and recreation has to be key.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go into a section now where we're going to ask the candidates the same questions, and then we'll alternate back and forth about who begins first. But with the first question, we will go back to Lynette, if that's fine. In the city Apopka charter, the role of a city commissioner is not well defined, which gives commissioners an opportunity to define it for themselves. If elected, how will you define your role as a commissioner?
Thank you. I can say that I've written job descriptions. I've written standard operating procedures. And one of the things that I would suggest is that we have to create a comprehensive, very blunt, example of what that title and what those job responsibilities are. Because when you do get into a position, if there's vague or a lot of vagueness, what happens is that a person does not know what they're doing. It's that they're treading water, trying to stay with their head above water, but yet they're going to flounder because it's not defined. So what I would do is I would bring to the table, hey, let's go ahead and create what the exact expectations are set forth for the commissioner. I also believe in that there should be districts so that there is true representation for everybody in Apopka. That is my, interpretation of how it should be. It could be anybody's interpretation, but that is personally mine. But when it comes to city commissioner, yes, an outline job description of what the expectations are should be there and what they cannot do alone, but what they can do collectively.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, same question. Repeat it if needed.
No, and that's almost the beauty of it, not having a clearly defined role charter for the position of commissioner. Clearly there's the legal obligations of going to city council meetings and voting on business, but it's the times not sitting in the council chambers that really becomes the biggest gray area about what you're supposed to do as a commissioner. And every person in this room probably has a little bit different of a variation of what those expectations are. I think as a candidate running for office, the thing that I have to commit to the most is making sure that I stand by what's on my palm card that I'm handing out to voters. This is basically what I'm saying I'm trying to do. This is my business plan. This is my mission, vision, and values. And I stay true to that. But at the flip side, these become stale. Everything on this palm card has the possibility of becoming stale, not relevant 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now. So you have to have someone that's going to sit up there and be able to pivot their thinking, listen to the people that they represent, to make sure that we're servicing our constituents. And then the biggest thing, like any small business owner would probably attest to, is making sure that you are responsive, communicative, and really serving the people that put you in this office. It's something I pride myself with. And like I said, there's probably situations where I was not perfect in terms of my response time, but any person who's reached out to me with an email, telephone call, any sort of request, nothing is too big or too small for me. I treat everybody the same. Think about it. Prior to sitting in this room right now, or maybe being as involved as you are within this city, a lot of times people interact with government once or twice in their life. It's not something that is standard operating procedure, to use your word, for people to come and interface with government employees, elected officials, things like that. So it's making sure that you're empathetic to people's situations, their interface with government, and really, just trying to do what's best and what's right for them.
Okay, thank you. Second question, excuse me, and we'll begin with Mr. Becker again, is if you were elected, what detailed policies would you support to protect residents, property investments, and their ability to accumulate wealth on their investments from encroaching development?
Yeah, this will probably be a recurring theme for me tonight, because a lot of this stuff kind of anchors back to our comprehensive plan. And because that is something that's going to be on a broad scale updated within the next year, a lot of that stuff is within there. You look at current conversations right now within Rock Springs Ridge, for example. It came up with the Hamrick Estate neighborhood. It came up. It'll come up again if things develop further within that neighborhood. But the density, max 2 dwelling units per unit density north of Poncan. All of this stuff is laid out within the comprehensive plan. And so when we're thinking about, and again, close your eyes and imagine being on social media, right? When people are saying, hey, I don't want this in my backyard. But okay, when we're having these conversations, we're getting into the detail to talk about where these developments can go. We've got to make sure that you have a very detailed-oriented person within that role. My previous experience, during my time on council and as Commissioner C4, we did a total rewrite of our land development code. It's a 900 and some odd page document. When it came to city council, there was still a lot of revisions that I thought still needed to happen, and I fought to make some pretty sound investments. One of those was eliminating straight small lot zoning districts for single family resident homes. Whereas a developer could buy a 100-acre piece of property and put all 40-foot wide lot homes on that property and just be counter to the aesthetic that we all think of when we think of Apopka. I fought to eliminate that small lot zoning district, and that was removed. Because the idea is when you have some of these smaller homes, you want to have developments that have a nice mix of home product, with the idea being that we want to create a true life cycle community. Hey, I'm starting out as a new family. I'm going to buy a small home. But I also want to find value in living in Apopka, and I know that there's other homes that are bigger that I can expand into within my same neighborhood. Can't tell you how many times that I've met neighbors that have moved out of our neighborhood that are neighbors of mine, and I ask them, oh, that's unfortunate, where are you moving to? Oh, I'm just moving to the new neighborhood down the street. So you have a lot of people that stay within this community. We just want to make sure that the comprehensive plan reflects what we're trying to do over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years that document is going to put forth.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, same question. Happy to repeat it if needed.
Please repeat the question.
Yes. If you were elected, what detailed policies would you support to protect residents' property investments and their ability to accumulate wealth on their investments from encroaching development?
Well, first and foremost, with anything that's coming to the city of Apopka, to be proactive opposed to reactive is to attend the planning and zoning committee meetings. That is so that we know what's coming down. That's going to be strategic forecasting as far as the development that's coming or that is already happening at this point here in Apopka, which is a lot. The other is to go to the development review committee meetings. Those are where people can speak their stance, just as with the planning and zoning meetings, if they feel that, okay, with these properties that are being developed, is it encroaching? Is it going to diminish the value of my current property? I've heard from many of the my constituents. They'll say, well, Lynetta, Ms. Johnson, what do you think about, this new development that's coming over here? I don't want, someone's home, right next to my fence line. So what I say to them is that, these developments have long occurred before I came on the scene. But what I can do is moving forward is say, hey, bring some representation, bring some, suggestions to the table saying, you know what, I don't think that this should happen. I don't believe that, development should occur at this point in time. Or, or what we can do is when you get comps from current areas and see how it's going to maximize the new residential area. Those are the things that I'm suggesting that I would like to put into a policy format for reviewing upcoming development, but yet also make sure that we even have like a committee to see what the strategic forecast can be for these up and coming developments, whether it's residential or commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Johnson, we start with you again for the next question, and it is, would you support any development within the boundaries of Rock Springs Ridge and Errol Estates? If so, why? And if not, why not?
Well, I've been to both areas, and I really don't see much that can be developed. Rock Springs Ridge is a beautiful area. I mean, they have the golf course at this time where they're trying to figure out, what they'd like to do, but they need to speak with their homeowners association. With Arrow Estates, I've been out there. I know they have like a similar situation because I parked on that little hill where they have the golf course. I would not suggest of doing any development unless you have a consensus of what the current homeowners want there. You just can't go in there and just start bulldozing and doing what you want. It's not fair to the homeowners. It's not fair. I mean, if you have, I think it's gopher tortoises that are at Rock Springs Ridge. I mean, you have to deal with the state on that level because of the wildlife. No, I don't. My stance is no development in those areas.
Okay. Mr. Becker, same question, have to repeat if necessary.
No. I've been asked this question quite a bit. So, during my time on council, it was brought up last cycle, but I've been very consistent in my response to this particular question. In terms of mass development to the scale that is being talked about, and I think the spirit of your question, absolutely not. I honor the current approved planned unit development plan, which dictates the dwelling units that are currently approved. And so when you do the math about what's currently developed and what's in that PUD, I think the delta or the difference is 17 dwelling units. So if you're splitting hairs, 17 dwelling units, sure. But to the scale that is being discussed of land swaps and all these other things, I don't see it. There is the gopher tortoise conservation easement that's on the 50 acres or so, 50 plus acres that are north of the property. And a lot of decisions would have to be made in order for that to be released, taken away, for a land swap to occur, for further development to occur. So I guess the short answer is I honor the planned unit development that's currently in place, that was approved over 15 years ago. And I also have to look at things as they come before our business or before city council. I mean, there's not a manner which the city council could squash someone from making an application to try and do that. I think what people should make sure that they have is a representative that's going to look at all the facts and all the details and make the proper decision. Because again, I've used this example before because we do have homeowners that come from Rock Springs Ridge that talk in front of city council, almost for us to be proactive, the city council to curb anything from happening. But I use this example of if you within the Rock Springs Ridge neighborhood wanted to install a fence and your neighborhood prevented wooden fences from being erected, and you put an application for a wooden fence, nothing's stopping you from making the application. What's stopping you is that you would hope that people that are representing you use your guiding documents, whether they be bylaws, and in this case, the planned unit development, to make sure that they're making the proper decision on your behalf. And that's what I'm committed to do.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question in this section will go back to Mr. Becker as well. The general consensus of many residents and businesses about the overall appearance of the business corridor is that it does not necessarily present a welcome to Apopka image. What proposals would you present to the City Commission to improve the overall appearance of the main business corridor? Yeah,
and I firmly agree with that. And I think if you go to city council meetings, I think people that sit on council agree with that. And I think there's steps that are being discussed to be taken. But we've got to stop talking in future tense about doing beautification for our city. We've got to do it now. And the first thing is you got to pay for it. You've got to budget responsibly to put the type of investment in our public services area to make sure that things do look nice. I mean, I overuse this slogan, but hopefully maybe just pretend like you've never heard me say this before in the room if you've heard it. But the whole adage, you eat with your eyes first. I used to work in software development, and so when you develop software, you want something that's intuitive. So you visually have to look at something and realize it's nice for you to kind of take that second step. Same thing with a city. When you drive through here, if we have people that are visiting us from out of town, we want them to drive to Apopka and say, oh, okay, this is beautiful, this is nice. I mean, we've got the natural aesthetic, but we want our city streets to look the same. I think there is, obviously partnerships, encouragements that you can make with business owners that sit along those corridors to make sure that the pieces that are their responsibility actually get done. Some of these larger corporate organizations, that's easier because you can put a pressure on them because they don't want brand reputational risk. But the things that are our city responsibility, we have to make sure that we budget for it appropriately so that they are getting done. It's something as simple as making sure that the edges are cleaned around a curb. Our our signs that say "Welcome to the Amphitheater" are updated and look nice because that's a premier event. You know, so all these little things, they add up, and we just have to make sure that we budget properly for it.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, same question, and happy to repeat it again.
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. I think the Highway 441, I think the biggest thing that I see, besides some of the businesses that are closed, could be the landscaping. Of course, again, as Mr. Kyle Becker said, that all has to be budgeted. But one of the things that was mentioned yesterday by Mayor Nelson was the new signage that is coming, that are going to be installed here soon, which will help beautify and show people exactly, you know, where they're going to. One of the things I'd like to see beyond, I think it's Central Avenue, going north on 441, there are a lot of there are car businesses, used car sales. Maybe they can tidy up, you know, maybe, you know, as the city council can speak with those about tidying up their areas. I look at 441 a lot like Highway 50. It's a thoroughfare. You know, there's no, nobody's really going there to hang out. They're going to and from. That's how I look at 441. However, it should be beautified, but then we need to encourage people to redirect them to come this way so that they can dine, you know, or have a beer at this point, go to the Axe Hole, go to the cookie place. We need to, you know, focus on this side. What I'd like to see is more development over here, and then eventually have an urban sprawl where it starts to go and grow bigger. That's what I'd like to see. With regards to 441, yes, tree line. We have the signs that are coming out. We need to focus on some of those closed businesses that are there. The car businesses, help, you know, guide them to beautify our city.
Okay, thank you. The following questions come from people in the community, and again, 3 minutes to answer each one. And so we'll start with Ms. Johnson again. One of the Achilles heels in the recruiting of restaurants, other businesses, and sustainable housing in the Apopka CRA is having the infrastructure in place to support growth. What strategies would you introduce to expand the productivity of the CRA?
What I'd like to do is, currently we work with Lift Orlando, which is a nonprofit charity that helps bring community health centers, and they also help with senior housing. That's what I work with. I would work with an entity like Lift Orlando to help foster those types of businesses. They also help with the Hannibal townhomes that are coming here to Apopka. I would collectively work with them because they have the blueprint. They're going to help guide us. We're going to help, you know, foster those, the businesses, the health centers, the housing. So I would focus my energy there collectively with the city council. And again, nothing can be done with one person. It has to be a collective effort because everybody has an opinion and they may see something that I don't see. So, you know, you have to, you know, counter what I don't see with what they see and then work collectively so that we can bring those enticing things to Apopka, the restaurants, the businesses, the health centers, you know, stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Becker, as a city commissioner, what is your plan to eliminate blight and create incentives for investment in the CRA and protect investments for current residents and businesses?
Yeah, I mean, and the CRA, for those that don't know in the room, you know, obviously encapsulates our downtown pretty much area. And so, you know, going back many, many decades, you know, people have put so much focus on trying to revitalize our downtown corridor. And obviously it hasn't been too successful because we're still sitting here talking about it today. But there's, you know, one mechanism is obviously the CRA budget. You know, the budget that we've passed in years past, where you use monies to try and create a more vibrant CRA boundary, whether that's through the trail system, doing a walkable segment between 5th and 6th in the Station Street area and the downtown corridor. You know, obviously back in 2016, signed the agreement with Torres to do the downtown development. Obviously that's not turned out as quickly as, you know, anybody had anticipated at that point in time. But we want it as a thriving place where, and I'll hesitate from doing comparisons to other cities because I know that it gets exhausting. But ultimately, it's a place where we all want people to be able to go and have time and congregate with their families. Go downtown, spend a full day if they want to in our downtown area. We also have, within the CRA boundaries, a lot of businesses that do have blight. And we've budgeted and earmarked certain funds within that CRA budget so that they can do repairs to their businesses, facade repairs, need assistance on bringing things up to code. And obviously, lastly, for the residents that live in that area, is they want to make sure that they have a safe area. And that's investing in our public safety, primarily our police department, to make sure that we have enough police officers that everybody feels safe when they are within our CRA district, whether they're going down there and visiting a commercial establishment, live there, or operate a business there. There's many different tools that we can put in place there to have a very thriving downtown.
Okay, thank you. Next question really starts with economic development, and it's for Ms. Johnson. And I apologize, a little bit long again, but I'm happy to repeat. Many residents and businesses are deeply concerned about Apopka's growth patterns, which place financial pressures on community resources. If elected city commissioner, what specific policies would you sponsor to balance the current growth configuration relative to not assessing residents and businesses additional fees and charges to cover the new services needed?
Well, there's a thing called IGA, which is called an intergovernmental agreement contract. Whereas what we currently have with Orange County for the Sheriff's Department to support the Apopka Police Department, we also have that with the Fire Department, with the Orange County, with Apopka. Because what those type of agreements do is that they'll say, okay, we're going to coordinate Apopka and Orange County, and we're going to use resources collectively to solve an issue or a problem, to work together. Many entities do that. When I was in the Air Force, if an Army, they had a contract with us and they wanted to go to the Defense Language Institute. So they would pay us, so we would train them, and then it's working collectively. We solved an issue. Now we have someone that knows a different foreign language. So henceforth, we have the same thing with the police and fire department. To echo what Mr. Becker was saying, yes, our police force is under 20 officers. We got to get that fixed. We have to. Our fire department, we need to work on the training with that. Going back to the IGA, what I would do is that I would foster that as growth comes with these agencies to see what other items that we can address or what other help or assistance that we can get, because we are a growing city. We don't have the reserves that we have as a growing city. And it was said over the budget meeting last week that we are growing the fastest, but yet we don't have the manpower to sustain that. So that has to be addressed. And it was addressed within the budget, but yes, we have to do a lot of things post-haste because of our exponential growth.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Mr. Becker. If gentrification was the only option to expand the city center, would you support the expansion? If so, why? If not, why not?
I support what the vision is currently of our downtown area. The city center was outlined, the master plan was approved back in 2016, and that met the scrutiny of our community. We discussed it. We talked about it at council, and it was approved. Those are open conversations to anybody that wished to participate. Station Street area as well. I think there's natural buffers between those Station Street, downtown, the 5th and 6th Street corridor, that you can accomplish that and not have to gentrify that particular area in whole. As you think where our boundaries lie south of those locations on 10th Street, once you get past the railroad tracks is when you get into your heavy residential area. North of the railroad tracks is going to be more commercial and so forth. So I don't think that one has to be or the other. I think they can both succeed without truly gentrifying an area. To my previous point, the CRA budget allows for homeowners within our CRA area to improve the look of their homes, harden their homes if they're not in code, things like that. So we certainly want to promote anything that we're doing within the city of Apopka that people, and again, this is very unique to Apopka. I mean, I grew up from Altamont Springs, but the people, the sense of community and ties to multi-generational communities here in the city of Apopka is something that's truly unique. And to be honest with you, the people that live in our CRA boundaries, it's even more unique. They have even more stories of them living there for a much longer period of time. So obviously I would want to do anything that promotes the people that have lived here for decades and multi-generations to be able to stay in their homes, and those homes to stay affordable. But I also firmly believe that we can have the best of both worlds and have a very vibrant downtown and Station Street area without true gentrification.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Ms. Johnson. Do you believe residents that are directly impacted by encroaching development should have the right to negotiate with developers and the city over such issues, such as types of development, density, and traffic? Again, if so, why? And if not, why not?
If someone has a concern about development, they come to the city council. They share their concerns with their commissioners. They share their concerns with the mayor. Whenever there is development happening, I know that they get a letter, and that's when the concern should be raised. You can't wait till after they're getting ready to clear, to mobilize, to be upset about something. I do understand that there may be circumstances that people may not have a clear understanding of what's going on. However, I do believe that if someone, I'll just say my home, and just say I have an acre, if someone says, you know what, I think I'm gonna clear away so that we can have a street that goes from here right through where your home was. Well, you know what, first of all, I'll probably raise Cain, first and foremost, but then I'm sure that there's gonna be communication, written communication, I'm sure followed with verbal communication if this was going to happen. You have to be proactive, not reactive. Now, there could be incidences where, like I said, there might be a communication problem, there may be an issue of just maybe a different language. There has to be, the onus has to be on that person to say, you know what, either they're going to come to the council and say, you know, why is this happening? I didn't get, you know, information, I've been misinformed. There has to be a process put in place. I'm not sure if there is one at this point, but I would definitely follow up and work with my peers in getting something in place so that it doesn't happen where someone is now like, I am homeless because they're building a street or they're building a business there or a restaurant. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Mr. Becker, next one's for you. Some businesses believe that the current approval process for development is perceived to be time-consuming and onerous. What changes would you propose to the city's current development approval process, if any?
Well, I mean, the development process is obviously outlined within the Land Development Code. From a procedural standpoint, I think it's fine. It's the resources needed to shepherd it through the process I think is deficient. It goes back to a previous comment that, you know, even, you know, we talk about the backlog of, let's call it, the dwelling units that we have in the city of Apopka, and I'm going to say a rough number because I don't know what the exact figure is. Let's just call it 9,000 and be done with it. But when you think about our city process, the department that issues certificates of occupancy, they're not issuing thousands of COs on an annual basis. There's a finite capacity that we have within City Hall. I was having a discussion with a gentleman the other day, and I think their fence permit was going to take maybe 3 weeks, give or take. I mean, so we have to have the idea within the community that when they come to the city of Apopka, if you said one word that comes to mind, it has to be efficient. And to create efficiencies, you have to have the staff in order to do that. Now again, there's schools of thought here, right? When we say adding staff, you can, in government positions, we call that bureaucracy or whatever the case might be. I disagree with that. Adding staff that's needed, that makes a more efficient government that we can then tell the people of Apopka that is a value add for any time that they interface with City Hall. It's going to be an efficient process. is, I think, a great thing to share, whether that's with the business community, whether that's with individual residents filing a permit. I go back to the daycare that my girls went to here in the city of Apopka. I won't name names, but when she put her original plans, and again, no pride of ownership here. None of us were commissioners or mayors or anything like that when this occurred. But the idea was, she put in the original plans. They made her change one section of the plan. She did that at her expense, resubmitted it, and then another piece of that plan, which hadn't been changed, was now needing to be changed, the second review. And that went through 7 or 8 iterations. And so we can't have that. We've got to have responsibly staffed departments for us to meet our needs. And I don't think that, depending on the position, we don't have to hire high-cost employees. Some of these things are fairly boilerplate type of positions, meaning they're set finite tasks that people can go through. If you need to contract for temporary workers to do that type of position when demand is high and you can get rid of them when demand is low, great, let's use that as part of our staffing toolkit. But I think we really have to take measure of the amount of people that we have on staff and how efficient we are within City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, next question for you. What specific policies would you champion to curb urban sprawl? Curb urban sprawl.
Urban sprawl? At this point, I wouldn't put any policies in to curb urban sprawl, because what we need right now are businesses. We need businesses, for the city of Apopka. We need to expand, by bringing the restaurants, and I would love to have, the small business, because as what I've learned as a small business is that throughout COVID, we were the ones that stayed open when we got the PPP money. Most of the big businesses received PPP and they kept it moving and still let people go. So no, I wouldn't put any policies in place immediately for, to limit urban sprawl, because that's something that you want to have, and it typically happens over a period of 15 to 20 years. Now, if there is something that goes awry, oh yes, you want to address it right then and there. But you want to make sure that you want to promote growth. We want to promote growth around Station Street. We want it to continue to grow. Those CRA areas, we want them to have the growth in finances so that they can keep their area beautiful. That's what I would do. And now if there's a situation that comes up, definitely, once again, it's not a unilateral decision, it's a decision with my peers to determine, okay, well, you know what, this is happening right now, we need to put a halt to it. Or if they want, they can put precursors in place. That's what I would do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, I think you may have already addressed this, but it's on our list to ask, so I'm going to ask it. Do you still support establishing a standalone economic development department for the city of Apopka? If yes, why? What benefits would it provide? And if not, why not?
Absolutely, with a capital yes. I've been unwavering in my assessment that it would be a tremendous value add for our city. It's the same when I put forth the job description I created, I don't know, it seems like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And I've seen other people in the community quote a number, that it would cost, $400,000 or $500,000 day one. I just fundamentally disagree with that. I think the amount of investment that we could make in an economic development resource within the city of Apopka could pay off tremendously. Just both of us tonight here have talked about blight business or dormant businesses or vacated businesses. Having someone on staff that's going out to the community, that's proactively getting outside of our borders to say, hey, we've got these dormant and vacant places, have you thought about Apopka? And go out and brand our city and really sell our city and the value of why it's important for them to come and do their business here within the city of Apopka. In my job description that I put in there, salary-wise, I would say give or take $100,000. It sounds like a whole bunch, but what that could stand to gain for the city of Apopka is much, much higher. We've gotten what we've gotten over the past several years. You saw that in a policy change that I led recently around the dollar stores. Again, all we were getting is all these retail establishments with all these dollar stores coming and coming and coming. and just this mass proliferation of these types of stores. And so it scares off other type of retailers, scares off other potential grocers. So I led policy to set up the buffer requirements for those positions. But it's an economic development director focus that's thinking about all of those things to say, hey, city council, you might want to think about these policy adjustments because these are barriers for people not to come and do business within Apopka. Oh, by the way, I was out at this conference, so I was outside of the city, and I've got these potential business owners that want to come here, but hey, they're going to bring 100 high-paying jobs, but they want a certain incentive. We've got to have everything on the table to have a very broad, diverse way for us to go and attack and get new businesses to come here, especially the main quality of life amenities that we've all heard, the sit-down restaurants, entertainment options, places to shop, et cetera. And again, a lot of times this gets politicized too, and I've been very transparent about my opinions about the chamber. The Chamber of Commerce is a partner in that model versus a sole provider, meaning there's areas that the chamber needs to stick with their mission and service the population that is their membership. And that's not gonna always be the same addressable market that the city is trying to go after too. So I think that having someone on staff that's accountable to both the administration as well as our city council is gonna get the desired results that we all want.
Okay, thank you. Next question, Ms. Johnson, same vein about economic development. What economic development policies would you propose over the next few years to build a more resilient local business economy?
To build a more resilient economy has to deal with, again, it's all about strategic forecasting. When I listened to Kyle about having an economic developer, I thought about immediately if there was a person like Ms. Sanchez and Mr. Hitt, like a combination, and then with someone who had other attributes. In that capacity, you have to be able to understand where we came from and where we're trying to go, and what's the main goal. I would like to see someone in a capacity that has all those attributes. I think that we have it already within the city, within the administration, I would say, and not necessarily the council, but what I've seen with the planning and zoning committee, the development review committee, I've seen those attributes there that people have, and I think that it would be something very, plausible that maybe the current commissioners and mayors should look at. Again, with that being in mind, I believe that if you have someone who can maintain that, look for us to continue to thrive, we will be resilient. We'll be I don't want to say like the next city that a lot of people like to compare Apopka to, but I think we're going to be better. Put parameters in place, look for goals, have some milestones in between to set those, and once you meet the milestones to get to those goals, I think we can be resilient. But I really do believe that we need to have a person or even a group of people that look at what we can do in the future for Apopka so that whatever we decide to do, we don't flounder on. And of course, I think there will be mistakes, but we can catch them beforehand and make it right. So I believe in that Apopka will be resilient, putting the right people in place or a committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, what industries do you believe that Apopka officials need to focus on to bring to the city? So what kind of industry would you bring here?
Well, I think it depends on what type of business that you're trying to. Employment centers might be something different than, say, a retail or commercial. Obviously, we've got a lot of technology, tech companies that, Lake Mary has prided themselves on being a tech hub, and those are very high-paying jobs. I think, from an employment center perspective, we need high-paying jobs within the city of Apopka. I think a lot of times we get passed over by some of these restaurants or commercial or shopping areas because they don't really understand our demographic here. And our demographic is strong within the city of Apopka from a median household income perspective, from the amount of people that we have here. I mean, it's just everybody leaves the city of Apopka on a daily basis. We're truly that bedroom community. To kind of offset or counterbalance some of that, you want to have employment centers. And so, like I said, technology companies, But then, from the restaurant and commercial point of view it's the sit-down restaurants, right? I mean, it's what everybody wants to do is go out with their family and have experiences. And then, don't get me wrong, we have great restaurants within the city of Apopka. Like I said, you can go and sit down and have those same types of things that I'm talking about. It's just the more that we can offer our residents in that regard, I think is what we're really after. Then we also have to realize where we are situated. We're very situated in a very environmentally interesting area. We've got the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. We've got Kelly Park. We've got Wekiva Springs that is very close by. And so, ecotourism, things that get people out in nature, I think is an industry that would thrive here. And I don't know if you've driven down Rock Springs Road on a weekend morning, but it's backed up probably all the way down to, Publix, it seems, by 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So what are those people doing? Are they just gonna sit in their vehicle for hours on end, waiting for capacity to free up within the parks? Or is that an opportunity for us to then say, hey, you can't get in the park just yet, but look at these other options that we have within the city of Apopka. So very active type of industry. And you have to realize what the city of Apopka is. It's a cobbling together of a whole bunch of families, and active families at that. So highly recreational entertainment, things like that. So.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to go down to maybe questions a little bit more about the local economy. Again, minor apology, Ms. Johnson. It's a little bit long, but I'll repeat it if necessary. As a city commissioner, what initiatives would you champion to improve the lives of all struggling residents and businesses in Apopka, particularly those residents and businesses south of 441 that may be adversely affected by gentrification?
I would bring to the table pretty much mirror what Orange County had done. Orange County, whenever they had issues, whether it was trying to pay your rent, they had an office established where people can go to get assistance. I believe that the city of Apopka could possibly do the same thing. You could get rental assistance, or if there's a business struggling, refer them to resources to where, if they're struggling, you have a lot of different options there. Or maybe not that many, because if they're struggling, they may not be able to get a line of credit, okay? If there's grant money, that would already have to be established to where maybe a business can get some grant money, maybe at a very lower interest rate. That's tough, and it's very sad, because I hate to see people struggling, and I want to offer help. In order to give them help, we have to put an agency together to foster that assistance, whether it is for rental, whether it's for business, whatever it can do to help them to stop their bleeding, for lack of better words, struggle. That's what I would do. I would put like an agency together, or suggest that an agency could occur.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, the number one contributor to global warming is urban sprawl, according to some, and local government is the main culprit for urban sprawl. What policies would you, as city commissioner, endorse to limit urban sprawl?
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to the item that I said before about the small lot zoning classification, because 40-foot wide lot product is home on top of home on top of home with barely anything between. Certainly not green space, areas that could counteract the effects of that change, more trees, things like that. And I think, again, the comprehensive plan, land development code in concert will dictate where some of that urban sprawl will go. Urban sprawl, there's certain areas where we want more density versus other areas. We want to preserve some green space. We want to make sure that density goes where it's more logical. And so when we think about density, and of course, multifamily is of extreme interest within the city of Apopka. Probably, it may have been my first or second year on council, but up to that point, there hadn't been any multifamily interest in the city of Apopka. And then I think Martin Road Martin Ridge Apartments were approved right before I got on council. And now you've just seen an acceleration of multifamily because of the affordable housing situation that we're in. But making sure that density goes to where it's most efficient too. When you think about density or multifamily, you want those near interchanges or major arterial roadway systems that allow for quick ingress and egress. So think Kelly Park interchange. There's a development of regional impact for that purpose. The Kelly Park form-based code, it encourages density within that area, and as you spread out, you have more of that open space aesthetic. Another element within the comprehensive plan is a conservation element. And so we've got to have serious conversations about here within the city of Apopka. Yeah, there's a lot of green space still. We're 35 square miles. There's a lot of green space that's still there. I mean, I would suggest that we have a very targeted campaign to do conservation as we get some of these developments that come off to counterbalance some of that as well. Urban sprawl, we don't want to see the land of just single family home rooftops for all the horizon to see. We want to balance, some of that green space along with it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, next question for you. Many local governments adopt economic policies to inhibit what's something called the leakage effect, which is defined as consumers spending their discretionary income outside their local economy, so going somewhere else. As city commissioner, what policies would you promote to limit the leakage effect?
Oh, to prevent the leakage effect is to bring the businesses. As I said earlier, is to have the circle of eight effect. If you live here, you work here, you want to spend your money here. That's the encouraging thing, is to bring businesses here. We luckily, we have the beautiful King's Landing here. We have the Wekiva Springs here. We have Magnolia Park that's getting ready to open back up. You want to bring people here and say, hey, this is what we have to offer. But to spend the money here is that we have to bring the business here. And I like to focus on bringing on small businesses. I would love to have like the large businesses here, but more importantly, you bring opportunity, you bring jobs here, and people buy their homes here, of course. So that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Mr. Becker, for you, local economies are susceptible to chronic stresses and acute shocks that hinder the community's business ability to survive, adapt, and grow. As a city commissioner, what economic policies would you incorporate over the next few years to build a resilient business community?
There's so many factors that go into reasons why they can't be resilient. First and foremost, we just saw it, COVID, a global pandemic. That's impacted businesses probably more than what we'll see in the next 100 years. And during that time, I was proud, along with the rest of our council, to make sure that we were looking at our policies and our ordinances to make sure that even if there was statewide constraints or county constraints, that we as a city were doing all that we could to make sure that businesses could still operate and thrive. I think the mayor had proposed, like Beef O'Brady's, for example, where they could serve food out in the parking lot and serve food out there. And so it's a little thing, but it goes a long way. And so really, I think in my position, I don't have a crystal ball to know all of the different factors that might come in play, but I can say this, is that as a commissioner, each business is going to have their own challenges. You were talking about before is some of these, like an electrical business, it may be counter-cyclical to market conditions. Other businesses might be more susceptible to outside factors. So you have to look at it from a business by business perspective and then understand what their needs are, how are they going to thrive, and then we can set policy accordingly. I'm by no means the expert, but I'm a willing participant to be part of the conversation and make common sense policies to make sure that those businesses thrive.
Okay, thank you. Next section, short section, deals with annexation. So, Ms. Johnson, what model would you recommend to develop consensus among all parties to place the South Apopka annexation question on a ballot?
What do you mean by all parties?
Anyone involved in the discussion about whether there should or should not be annexation.
Well, it begins with, the conversation is proposed, then it's brought with the commissioner, the commissioners, and the mayor. We have to think about cost. Right now, I mean, to annex South Apopka, it's a very, very huge undertaking financially unless you could get like an intergovernmental agreement to help offset those costs. Because what you're doing now, we already have an understaffed police force. You know, we have understaffed fire department. I would love to, you know, to see the annexation of South Apopka because the conversation needs to be had because of what it is. It's south of the railroad tracks. You know, it's a huge thing of racism, and that's an important topic to talk about. So yes, I would love to see, you know, one Apopka, but it has to be done fiscally correct. You can't burden, you know, a city because of a desire. Yes, I understand it. I understand it perfectly. My mother is German and my father is black. I understand it because I've experienced it on both sides of the track. So yes, it is a conversation to be had, but it needs to be done out methodically. You just can't run anything off of emotion. So back to your question, yes, I'd like to see it happen one day, but we need to do it fiscally responsibly and making sure that we have the support and that we have the infrastructure administratively to handle that. Thank you.
Mr. Becker, the city has a large number of enclaves within its municipal boundaries. As a city commissioner, what plan would you develop to fold those enclaves into the city?
Well, I think it dovetails with the last question. I think you can achieve potentially both situations at once. Because, and I think we're completely aligned on this topic. I mean, you say the question that you asked Ms. Johnson was about putting it on the ballot. You can only put it on the ballot when you understand how to sell it one way or the other. I mean, we don't put ourselves on the ballot and not tell people what we're about. This is the exact reason why we're here right now, is to inform you about why something is on the ballot and why you should vote one way or the other. Same thing with annexation. I mean, the order of operation should always be, let's sit down in a mature conversation and look at the numbers first. How much is it going to cost if we were to annex the southern parts of our city into the city proper? How much is it going to cost? There's got to be economies of scale when it comes to fire service or police service. And I love the exchange that was at the budget workshop as it related to the annexation question. Commissioner Nesta asked Deputy Chief Miller, what would it take? And he didn't even want to contemplate that answer because they're understaffed from a police service perspective, and I totally agree. But my conversations with the unincorporated residents of South Apopka is they don't want less police presence, they want more. They firmly believe that additional patrol, things like that, are going to be very beneficial. So I feel like I'm answering your question. I didn't mean to do that. How it dovetails into the question that you asked me is, you can take that same opportunity to kind of round out the edges, if you will, because it's not just South Apopka. It's eastern, western parts of our city going all the way north that are jagged edges. I've had residents that live over off the Christiana area that have made telephone calls into 911, and the first 30 seconds to 45 seconds are spent discussing which jurisdiction might want to or might need to respond to the particular call. We can't have that. We can't have the confusion there. And so look at opportunities to shape up those areas, and it could achieve a better outcome. You think of some of those areas that we're talking about here, they might be a bigger tax-based contributor to offset some of the higher service or higher cost services that may be required in our downtown area in the short term. But over a long-term period, I have full confidence in the people that work for the city of Apopka that over a period of time, that could all work itself out. But again, to circle all the way back, we have to understand the financials involved so that we can not, that's not the most important, but you're not going to be able to sell the value statement, the value proposition of any sort of annexation unless you can articulately and educate the voters that are going to ultimately vote for that.
Okay, thank you. The next few questions will alternate between you two, but they have to do with homelessness in our area. So the first question for Ms. Johnson, again, generic, larger view for both of you, whose responsibility is it to care for those experiencing homelessness in our area? And why would you?
The responsibility, it falls on the individual themselves. It really does, because they made a decision. Now, there are going to be other situations involved. It could be mental health issues, which still has a huge stigma associated with it. But you don't want to have someone who's homeless that has mental health issues get ushered off to jail for a couple days, because what happens, it becomes a cycle, okay? The recidivism rate is going to be high when it comes to someone who's been booked in because they're homeless. I think it has to be just a collective effort. I mean, I love my city. I love Apopka. So it's like, okay, what can I do? There are charitable organizations, there are churches that are involved that try to aid people, but first and foremost, they have to want to help themselves. That's the bottom line. There's a beautiful lady that's over there by the chamber. She's always there. Wonderful lady. When I lived in Altamont, there was and it might be the same lady, but she was comfortable in her skin right there. You know, nobody wants to see anybody living on the street. We don't want, I mean, first of all, you have high risk of getting hurt, maybe even get killed. You could get very sick. Right. I mean, there are just a gambit of things that can happen. So to answer that, I think the onus falls on the individual. I think that there can be with perhaps a sourcing with community health centers to get someone who is experienced, a sociologist, to go talk with them, just to assess if there are any mental health issues, because I promise you, 9 times out of 10, there is a significant event that has occurred in that person's life to what put them there. So I would start with sourcing it out or trying to put a fund together to identify the issues, to get the people help, let them know what the rules are. Hey, if we're going to help you out, we're going to get you cleaned up, we're going to get you into a safe space, and then we're going to try and help you find sustainable employment. If they abide by the rules, and by the way, you leave at 7, you got to be home by 8, unless you have permission to work a different job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, for you, who should provide funds for services for those experiencing homelessness, cities, counties, others, just a generic? Who do you think should provide those funds?
Yeah, is this on? Yeah. And again, there's not a binary answer to this question. Let me kind of do the runway path here. But yeah, every situation, there's a myriad of reasons of why people are homeless. It could be voluntary, could be involuntary. Mental health obviously plays a big issue. Mabel is her name, over by Dunkin' Donuts. She's the sweetest person you'll ever meet. But I always harken back, and again, I use them as an example a whole bunch because I've been down to their operation. I've seen them. They do a lot here within the city of Apopka, and that's Matthew's Hope. And their model is a model that I think not only a nonprofit serving the homeless population could use, but a model that a lot of businesses could use too. Because they treat the people that come within the walls of their establishment in a humane way. They don't just hand them a bag of goods and say, here you go, here's your soaps, here's your toothbrush. They give them a bag of goods that says, here's the soap that you like, here's the toothbrush that is in a color that you like. You know, that sort of personalization to make it very human for people. And so they provide toiletries, they provide a place to take a shower, a place to get a warm meal. Not only that, but it also provides for the transition aspect, because you have to look at these in certain phases. It's assessing why they're homeless. It's getting them the resources that they need to be able to survive, but then understanding how to transition them out of homelessness. That could be, at their location, they have a woodworking shop that a whole bunch of people will refurbish wood, or they'll do like little trinkets that they'll sell in a store. But they also have the ability to transition away from there. So they get job skills within their location, but then they have transitional houses that they can go live independently within a roof over their head, so they can kind of transition themselves into home ownership. And they do a lot of servicing here within the city of Apopka. They've got a mobile unit that comes to the city. They don't get any of their funding through government means today. And so from a funding perspective, I don't think that government funding needs to be the first source, but it could be a partnership where, we get a lot of business owners that complain about homeless, loitering at their business, things like that. It could be beneficial to say, hey, and again, it's all about telling people the value proposition. Hey, this organization is doing it right. Here's the results that they have. And it's going to be, a business owner would be more inclined to donate their own funds into something like that if they have proven success. So I would totally support, businesses like that are doing it well. And then the last piece there is, because we are developing so quickly, is we are going to be displacing a whole bunch of homeless population that are currently camping in woods and things like that. So we've got to educate the people that are going to enforce trespassing and things like that to have some compassion and a little bit of a ramp to allow them to get away from their situation and get the help that they need.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, back to you, and you probably have already alluded to this and maybe answered this in some ways, but I've got it on my list. I'm going to ask it again. Should services provided to those experiencing homelessness be focused on transforming their lives with a comprehensive program to retrain them, or just sustain their lives in what they're currently doing, just living on a day-to-day basis?
It all begins with the approach of the person and their assessment. That's how you're going to be able to determine that if you put someone in the position of trying to transform their life for the better so they can be self-sustaining, or if this person does not have the capacity to be self-sustaining long-term. So those are the two, it all begins with day one assessment. From there, if it's something that long-term, of course, get them into a program, get them into, I've worked with, and I go back to Career Source, and the reason being is that there was a point in time as a veteran, I went to Career Source to say, okay, you know what, I think I need to update my resume. And I did come across a couple homeless people. So some of them had the ability to, I've fallen on hard times, this is what I want to do. Just to listen to them and have empathy and offer suggestions of maybe, you can reach out to this type of entity, depending on what their previous skill set has been, will allow them to be sustainable long-term. Then you've come across the people that, based on their initial assessment, it could be that they just can't do it. They just can't, they just don't have the capacity. So what do you do with them? Do you throw them out to the wolves? Of course not. What you'll have to do is get them involved with social services to get them the help that they need. That's all that you can do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, again, where in the city would or should we see the possibility of having a shelter located?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a city-led event, then obviously, you would have to look at city-owned property. I don't think there's a magic location for any establishment, because it comes with a stigma that you have to educate the public again. During my time on council, obviously we had a piece of business that came up, the Apopka Resource Center that was aiming to open. It never got to a place where there was a final approval on it. But of course, even just speculation of a location caused people to have a certain reaction. And so, again, if you look at, say, Matthews Hope area, it's located in an industrial type of park. It's not near commercial or retail establishments. It's in an area that you have to purposely go to it to do this. And I think the real key piece of it is, regardless of location, you want to make sure that it's safe for everybody involved. People go to it for a particular service, they get that service, and if it's not meant to be a place of hanging around or living, then you make sure that you have that it closes at a certain time and opens at a certain time. So location-wise, I don't have a clear thought in my mind right now where that might be, but I think the model that I just described is an area where it's not necessarily right next to a retail or a commercial location, but it's an area that can assess the great need that we have. And just to kind of expand on the whole issue too, it's funny how we use the city of Houston in so many kind of times. Maybe we should have done Houston as our sister city. I don't know, but you know, Houston has, if you read recent reports, Houston has done pretty well in terms of how they service the homeless population. And that's, you know, obviously through wild, aggressive acceleration of getting those people back into homes, back into a facility to live in. You know, not to get to the state of perfection. You know, if they're a drug user, are they 100% clean for a 2-year stretch? No, they feel like, let's get them into a place where they can, you know, get the housing and lodging that they need. So anyways, I don't have a location, but I know what that would look like in terms of operation and safety.
Okay, thank you. Well, believe it or not, we're almost to the end of our program, so this is kind of the last question, and we're going to let Ms. Johnson have that first shot at the last question, and it is this. What is your vision and agenda over the next few years to improve the quality of life for Apopka residents and businesses?
My vision is strategic infrastructure. As we know, over 9,000 housing permits have been allocated. As Mr. Becker has said, it didn't happen within a month or within a week. It happened over a period of time. What I'd like to see is bring in more businesses. As one of the questions you asked with Mr. Becker about what type of businesses, very much so high-tech, internet-based, web developers. Reason being is because of our day-to-day lives. We're either on the phone like that, or we're on the internet. Those are the type of jobs that are needed. They're in high demand. So I'm looking globally, we need to be competitive in that space. I think Apopka is perfect. Yes, I think we could be the next like Silicon Valley, or I just came from Texas, the next Austin, Texas, where they have a lot of, you know, businesses that are not require, like I say, back-breaking, like the warehouses type of thing. I see Apopka just being a well-sought-out city. They're going to be like, you know, you come down 441, you have some older infrastructure here that has history. Then you can go to our parks. You can see our nice developments. You can see our new developments. I think Apopka is going to be so well sought out. The reason why I moved to Apopka, I used to come back to Apopka back in the 80s. Don't say nothing. But my first boyfriend was from Apopka. And we used to come here all the time. Those were very fond memories for me. So to be here now, to have worked in Apopka for 7 years, I love it. I love it a lot, and I want people to come here. And I want to work with the commission, with the mayor, with my community to make it a place. And by the way, because we do have so much land, yes, we need to save pockets of it so we can have the landscape of not just roofs or a couple multifamilies here and there. I want to bring Apopka, or I want to see Apopka thrive, and we can do that by doing it strategically, bringing businesses here, and making it beautiful and keeping it beautiful.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker, same question. Happy to repeat it if needed.
Yeah, sure, if you could.
Sure. What is your vision and agenda for the next few years to improve the quality of life for Apopka residents and businesses?
Yeah, so I'll say vision set. Agenda has a negative connotation to me. No, I mean, again, it's, you know, in the role of commissioner, we've got to make sure that foundationally we are a strong city. You know, we can talk about, you know, the going out to the restaurants and all that sort of stuff. That's kind of icing on the cake. That cake is making sure that we have public safety and public services departments that are properly staffed and are running as they should. So very foundational, because if you ask the voter, and especially voters that are they want a pristine government function that's around foundational services. So making sure our streets are up to date, our infrastructure, our piping, water piping is up to date and safe. Our fire department is properly staffed. We're staffing for the budget positions for our police department. So foundationally speaking, we've got to make sure that we're doing those things in a very sustainable way. not letting us get behind so long that then it cost a whole bunch of money to get us back to where we should have been in a more sustainable kind of growth trend. Again, we live in a city that prides itself on our environmental aesthetic, and that is parks and recreation. Making sure that we control our investment and doing some of the investments that we've committed to with our residents. I mean, we just had a survey done within the last year and a half, talking about what new developments that we wanted to have within our park space, and we've got a budget for those. Right now, there's a little bit in the current budget, but not anything material that's going to really kind of carve out what the residents are expecting. And then a beautiful Apopka. Again, making sure that things are properly landscaped, properly maintained, the use of public art. We just had at our church, we just had the new creative hub of Apopka created. That it's like an art collective, and so where can we deploy people with that artistic eye within our community to make a piece of blank canvas that is the side of an abandoned building into something that's beautiful. And then again, I've always said that we need to have a city where those dollars that you asked on the question before do stay within the borders of our city. We are a bedroom community, but we can be a bedroom community with all of the quality of life amenities that our residents are demanding. Because a lot of people are like me. We moved here 15 years ago because we could afford a house. We were a young family before kids. Now we have 3 kids. When we get home from work, we're not wanting to turn around and go out far outside of our city. We want to do stuff here within the city of Apopka with friends, with colleagues, with people that we meet. And so that's a very vibrant Apopka is what I want. And again, like Ms. Johnson said, it's honoring the past, but really putting our stamp about what we want to look at as Apopka going forward.
Okay. We've taken tonight, we've asked you a lot of questions that we wanted to ask you, but there's always something that each candidate probably wished they'd been asked or wished they could say. I'm going to give each of you 1 minute. I'm going to start with Ms. Johnson. What would you like to tell us that we didn't ask or you'd like us to know?
I love Apopka. Well, I will share with you a personal event that happened to me this week. And it just really made me realize how callous some people can be, or how it was just very sad. Someone chose to put on Facebook an incident with my daughter. She suffers with bipolar. And they, thank God for Apopka Police Department. They knew how to assess the situation. And someone took it as it was a joke and tried to mirror that to my character. I'm a veteran. I serve my country. I want to serve my community. And when someone needs help, you get them help. You don't make fun of them. You don't make fun of anybody. I just wanted to share that I am a human. But guess what? I am a wonderful person. Thank you.
Mr. Becker, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, and to echo your point, we're up here just running for an office. Obviously, when you campaign for a public office, you put yourself out there and you kind of have to take your lumps, and a lot of times they're unfair lumps. And I'm sorry that you're having to go through that. And there's just a lot of stuff that people post on social media these days that is just not relevant to what we're trying to do running for the commission seat. And so that's why a forum like this is good, because now we can just talk about issues, because everything should be issues-based. This is a totally different topic, but people that try and make this local election into some national level politic kind of conversation. It's not about that. This is a nonpartisan race. We're trying to do what's right for the city of Apopka. The only thing that I would bring up that gets talked about a lot is the whole property tax. A lot of people point to me and say, Kyle Becker's going to raise your taxes. And I want to say here that I think it's irresponsible for myself, Ms. Johnson, any candidate that runs to say they definitively will or will not touch the property tax rate, because everything has to be looked at within the lens of what is the needs of the city. The financing of those needs, you have to look at that. And so I'm always going to be committed to saying I'm going to look at what our critical needs are, and I'm going to invest in those needs.
Okay. Candidates, on behalf of all the citizens of Apopka, we want to thank both of you for participating tonight, giving us your opinions on items of concern to those of us in the audience and those of us who are listening. I'd also like to thank all the people online for tuning in tonight and attending this Commissioner Forum. I hope the information has been interesting and informative. Candidates, we wish you the best of luck on your campaigns and the approaching election. I would say for myself individually, it's wonderful to have candidates who put themselves out there. It is not an easy thing. As Mr. Becker knows, and as you have found out, people say the darndest things that aren't always relevant, but we appreciate your interest and ability to do that. We also thank Victory Church for the use of their facilities and the Apopka Chief for use of their streaming services tonight, which has been hopefully seen by many people that are not here in the audience. So finally, we urge all citizens to understand the issues, to understand the candidates, where they stand on those issues, and most importantly, to exercise their vote, the right to vote. Not only this election cycle, but every election cycle. Please have safe travels if you're here tonight. We appreciate you coming. If you're at home, safe travels between your chair and the kitchen. Best regards. Thanks for coming tonight. Yeah.
Well done as always. Great job.
Good job.